The night began like so many others inside the vast, electric hush of the AGT theater, where thousands of stories waited behind the curtain, trembling with hope. The lights dimmed slowly, and the audience's chatter softened into a low, expectant murmur. Somewhere backstage, Nicotine Dolls stood alone, fingers curled tightly around the microphone, breathing in the scent of dust, cables, and old dreams. This was not just another performance. This was a moment balanced on the thin edge between being heard and being forgotten. For years, Nicotine Dolls had lived in the shadows of small clubs, late-night bars, and cracked pavements outside venues where applause was uncertain and paychecks were thinner than promises. Music had never been a straight road. It had been an alleyway full of flickering streetlights and locked doors, each song written in moments of heartbreak, exhaustion, and stubborn belief. Tonight, that long road led to this stage, to this single chance. The judges sat in their chairs, expressions carefully neutral, seasoned eyes trained to spot weakness and hunger alike. They had heard thousands of voices, many impressive, some unforgettable, most fleeting. Original songs were a risk here. Covers offered familiarity, a safety net for both performer and audience. But Nicotine Dolls had chosen differently. An original song was honest, raw, and dangerous. It offered no place to hide. When the announcer called the name, the sound echoed through the theater, magnified by lights and anticipation. Nicotine Dolls walked out slowly, each step heavy with memory. The spotlight found him, bright and unforgiving, washing the stage in white. From the audience, he looked small, almost fragile, but there was something in the way he stood, a quiet defiance shaped by years of being told no. The judges asked the usual questions. Where are you from? Why are you here? The answers were simple, spoken with a calm that barely concealed the storm beneath. Music had always been the language of survival. Singing was not a choice, it was oxygen. Then came the final question, the one that made the room pause. What will you be singing tonight? An original song. A ripple passed through the audience. The judges exchanged glances. This was where many dreams stumbled. One judge leaned forward, curious, another raised an eyebrow, cautious. But the stage was already set. There was no turning back. The music began softly, almost hesitant, like a confession whispered into the dark. A few gentle notes, bare and unadorned, gave the melody room to breathe. Nicotine Dolls closed his eyes, not to escape the audience, but to face something deeper. When the first line came, it was not shouted or forced. It arrived quietly, fragile, as if it had traveled a long way to be heard. The voice that emerged did not sound like it belonged to the body it came from. It carried a grainy ache, a trembling honesty that cut through the vastness of the room. It was a voice that had known loss, addiction, regret, and longing. Every word felt lived in, worn smooth by repetition in lonely hours. The audience leaned forward without realizing it, drawn in by the gravity of the sound. As the song unfolded, it told a story that did not beg for sympathy. It simply existed, unapologetically real. Lyrics painted images of sleepless nights, of promises broken by dawn, of love held together by nothing but hope and habit. There was pain in the melody, but also resilience, a refusal to collapse under the weight of it all. The judges' faces began to change. The skepticism softened into attention. One judge's eyes glistened slightly, another sat back, hands clasped, listening not just with ears but with memory. This was not a performance built on tricks or theatrics. There were no soaring runs designed to impress, no calculated pauses for applause. There was only truth, laid bare. As the song reached its chorus, the voice grew stronger, not louder, but fuller, as if the singer had finally decided to trust the room with something precious. The words carried a sense of reckoning, a confrontation with the self, and the audience felt it collectively. You could hear it in the silence, the way no one dared to cough or shift in their seats. Somewhere in the crowd, a woman wiped tears from her cheeks, surprised by their suddenness. A man nodded slowly, recognizing something familiar in the pain woven through the melody. This was the magic people rarely talked about, the invisible thread that connected strangers through shared emotion. For a few minutes, thousands of individual lives aligned with one voice. The bridge of the song arrived like a breaking point. The music stripped back even further, leaving the voice exposed, trembling on the edge. This was where many singers faltered, where nerves cracked or pitch wavered. But nicotine dolls leaned into it, letting the vulnerability show. The slight imperfections made it more human, more believable. When the final chorus returned, it carried the weight of everything that came before it. The voice soared not with arrogance, but with release, as if singing these words on this stage was an act of survival. The last note lingered in the air, fading slowly, gently, like the end of a confession. For a moment, there was silence. Then the theater erupted. The applause came in waves, rising from the back rows to the front, swelling into something almost overwhelming. People stood, some clapping above their heads, others pressing hands to their hearts. The judges rose to their feet as well, one by one, unable to remain seated in the face of what they had just witnessed. Nicotine dolls stood still, absorbing the sound, eyes wide with disbelief. This was not polite applause. This was recognition. This was a room full of strangers saying, without words, that they had felt something real. When the judges finally spoke, their voices carried a different tone than before. One judge praised the courage it took to bring an original song to this stage, especially one so personal. Another spoke about the voice, how it didn't just sing notes, but told a story, how it made people listen. The harshest critic on the panel paused longer than usual before speaking, choosing words carefully. This, they said, was why this show existed. To find voices that didn't just entertain, but mattered. The vote was almost an afterthought. The yes came quickly, confidently, punctuated by cheers from the audience. The golden lights flashed, bathing the stage in warmth. Nicotine dolls smiled, a small, stunned smile, as if still trying to understand that this moment was real. Backstage later, the noise of the theater faded into a distant hum. The adrenaline ebbed, leaving behind exhaustion and quiet wonder. For the first time in a long while, there was a sense of arrival, not at the end of the journey, but at a turning point. The song, once written in solitude, now belonged to the world. In the days that followed, the performance spread across screens and speakers everywhere. People shared it with captions filled with disbelief. "You won't believe this voice." Comments poured in from all corners of the globe, strangers thanking a singer they had never met for putting words to feelings they had never known how to express. The song became more than a performance. It became a mirror. Nicotine dolls watched it all unfold with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. Fame was a strange, sudden thing, but the core remained unchanged. Music was still about telling the truth, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. The AGT stage had amplified the voice, but the story had always been there, waiting for someone to listen. And somewhere, in a quiet room late at night, another dreamer watched the performance, heart pounding, realizing that maybe, just maybe, there was room in the world for voices like theirs too.